Angelo Idalo finally made it. You've been traveling around the country a little bit, doing a bunch of gigs and whatnot. We were finally able to lock you down to have you on Unconventional Money Moves. So happy to have you on today.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm glad that we were able to make time, and thanks so much for having me involved. It's great to connect with you, Josh.
Yeah, it's rare to find an artist and lock them down just because being an artist is basically on the go all the time, going from show to show. So being able to sit down and chat is always fun, especially with a creative person, because there's
Thank
so
you.
many good creative people out there that aren't like what you would hear on the radio that are successful in what they do. And I think like one of the ones that like comes to mind that's like mainstream but not mainstream, and that's like in the electronic scene is like Above and Beyond. They have like a massive following, but you'll never hear an Above and
Right.
Beyond song on the radio or anything like that.
Well, I
But you
feel
do
like,
a lot more than just make music, right? Like you produce, you do everything under the sun when it comes to.
yeah, when it comes down to it, it's funny because a lot of people will be like, "Oh, you're just a DJ. Like, do you want to DJ my 40th birthday?" It actually makes me laugh because the drums were my first instrument, and I started playing since I was a kid, and I just realized that I didn't want to like lug around a drum set for a band, or like I just grew up playing music to like my PA speakers, and realized that the one thing that I need to do is get my tools in order. And then I got down other instruments and composition and writing music for other people and fitting into projects where I can, as far as running my own studio and getting the experience from like living out in California and working for a lot of people out there. So that was like my stepping stone, and I was happy to bring it home. And now I'm just excited to for the next chapter here. So like I said, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So you started off playing drums. How did that transition into making music? Whenever I think drums, I always just think Nick Cannon and Drumline.
Well, I mean, I think that's like one part of like being a drummer, and I think there's like multiple drummers out there, and things that you know like there's drum line, there's like percussion, snare drum um, type schooling, and I think there's a lot of like hobby musicians that like to play the drums, and they just play like at their local bar and things like that. um, but I just kind of wanted to like start making music of my own, and then like incorporating different live elements to the music that I make, so then I can do more than just play drums on the music that I'm playing. So it kind of just snowballed, and I just had a lot of fun, learning piano, and incorporating strings, and working with like a lot of the people that I have. They've kind of given me their playbook, so it's nice to have worked with a lot of people with open arms and good spirits, and I feel like I'm definitely blessed for that and that experience.
How did you know when you were gonna like turn this from a hobby into like a real job?
Well, it was definitely right after college, and I went to college, by the way. I was a major in psychology. Schooling in my family is super important. I went to St. Joe's, and I went to St. Greg's for elementary school, and I had that whole Catholic life upbringing. And my there was no one in my family who really played music professionally. And during my like college process, I had the opportunity to move to LA, and I experienced that. So that was the peak of when I changed from, okay, I'm not going to be a psychiatrist in a doctor's office. I'm going to be working with people, and it's always great to like pick up jobs and have multiple streams of income. And I think that that's what like makes a successful music artist, because you can't just be behind the boards 24 hours and forget about yourself. And the other thing that I think makes you successful is, being able to have, well balanced, jobs and relationships, and I think that only makes the music better. But definitely, the turning point for me was like college era.
What exactly in the college era were you doing to hone your skills?
Well, I commuted first of all, so I didn't like partake in like living on campus or really like drinking um, underage. I hosted a lot of parties or whatever, and I think that was my avenue of like getting my music out there so young, is just having a bunch of friends over and playing music for them while they kind of partied and did their thing, and I think that you know nowadays it's a lot harder with social media, or easier, I guess, in a way to kind of put yourself in a light where you don't have to cram everybody in a room just to like make an idea. But that was originally my inspiration because I always had people over, and that was like the start of like my music making. um just like making beats on a laptop, from ideas on a piano to bongos to drums and just playing beats. I originally played to like the Beatles growing up, so I had like basically every single Beatles song memorized drum wise.
Mhm.
So things like that kind of started and kind of led me to like where I am today.
Hmm. Do you Can you recall like the first big party that you did where you were like reading the crowd and then maybe you had to like make a shift mid mid song or something? You're like, uh-oh, like I need to make a shift here. Like people are losing it because when it comes to the music that you play, you have to like read the crowd and you have to make adjustments on the fly. And
You do.
I don't know, and I don't think a lot of people realize that because if the people aren't jumping, then
Yeah, no.
it ain't happening.
I think one of the most challenging yet rewarding yet successful moments that I've had with that is definitely I got the opportunity from a buddy of mine called the Orchestrator, and he lives in Denver, Colorado. And he called me and he just was like, "Hey, do you want to open up with Afro Man?" And we're getting Afro Man. This would be done by Live Nation. And so it was like my biggest opportunity to do independently. And shout out to the Orchestrator for inviting me to play the show. But obviously, playing a lot of live electronic music, this was more of like a hip hop slash electronic show. And I was the first one to kick the event off for around like 3,000 people. And I was dealing with some health issues at the time because of, the elevation. So I got elevation sickness. So it was challenging for me to battle sickness while playing the show, while trying to read the crowd. But I think the best way I was able to do that was, I keep a live aspect to my shows. So even though I was able to be behind and play the keyboard and DJ my songs through, I was one of the first openers or whatever. So I just grabbed the mic and I just said, I'm gonna go for it. And I just went up in front of like 3,000 people and just started singing my songs to them, and they loved that even more. And I think that if you're afraid to do things like that, I'm a very kind of reserved person. Um, I think that privacy is power, and I definitely keep that in mind when I do music stuff, because you have to put a lot of your information out there and things. And I think that being able to like read that in the industry, as well as like reading the shows well, it's all about being able to do things on a dime, a drop of a hat. And I think one of my favorite experiences, not that I saw in person, but that I know from experience of music history or rock history, is that I actually heard that like Pearl Jam, during like one of their stage performances, he got, the lead singer got the mic wrapped around the upper stage, um, you know, build, and he climbed up to the top of of the stage, and he hung off the stage build up at the top. And you got to think, if it's a festival that's like 25 feet plus, you're hanging there with the mic. And I always thought that like Pearl Jam was like super cool because of their stage performances, and not just Pearl Jam. I went to a Kiss concert. It was one of my first concerts growing up, and being able to see them like basically light the stage on fire and spit blood, it was a really cool aspect for me to see. That really, since a young age, I was able to see that like stage performance is really everything. And I think when I play a lot of my shows and things like that, I like to just play a lot of different instruments and sing. And I'm not a very heavy artist. I like to make feel good inspirational tracks, things that I can play and have a saxophone player that can play flute to it, and really maximize my performance, not only as a musician but as a live electronic artist. And being a live electronic artist is obviously different than being just a strict DJ and picking other people's songs that you want to do for your set. So I think that I appreciate you bringing up the fine line between being a DJ and being having a live performance, and looking at a screen and things like that. So I appreciate the appreciation.
Yeah, I remember there'd there'd always be like clips of like whenever a DJ messes up, like Tiesto, like where all of a sudden he's playing something and then like everything goes
Right.
silent. And you're like, you see him
Right.
going and he doesn't realize it, and then he has to like flip it on a script. I also remember one time I saw Benny Benassi, and
Oh wow, how was that?
everyone's like, who is this guy? Like, who's this old guy? I go, he's been
A
DJing for
legend,
like longer than most people have been alive that are probably in the show. And it's just
literally.
crazy how effortless you see someone who's like crafted their skill, or someone like Carl Cox, who's like mainstream but not mainstream. Like
Yeah.
how easy
Well,
they just like move from
I
song to song.
well, I feel like each individual artist or DJ or band that you see, there's hundreds of thousands of hours that go into rehearsals or practice or things like that. To like, I know a lot of people may or may not put that practice in, but I think that that's what makes a good artist or not. If they're able to adapt and change and grow. And I saw Chromeo in Toronto very recently with the Midnight.
Fancy footwork.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, Cause I'm just, their song "Jealous," which is super good. Just being able to see them was super cool because they had their like guitars that were like the mirrors for their lighting, so they had their strobes bouncing off their instruments. If you've ever seen Chromeo, like you know what I'm talking about, with like the legs that are like the DJs and things like that. And I think it's important for other artists to see what other stage performances and other acts, like what they're doing to like set themselves apart. And I think my route is along the lines of like a younger, or like a French Kiwi Juice, or like these big gigantic Grizz, you know type acts that are, they make their music and they put together these sets, and then they are able to adapt and grow and play to the music that they produce. And falling under that genre, I think, is a lot more fun. um, and it gives me a bigger, audience, because I can intertwine music that people already know, and make songs that are remixes but are deep house, that like also have like the flute and saxophone, where I can like jump on a drum kit. So I think it's about making stuff that's memorable, but yet also having a show that people are going to remember as well.
Yeah, that must be difficult to be able to produce and develop music that people want to hear and at the same time stay true to yourself as the artist.
Well, I definitely agree with that. Like that's definitely a great aspect to bring up. But I think as long as you're able to differentiate the difference between your like heart and soul and like knowing what you want to do, as well as like taking a lot of like criticism and insults and this and that. Like you really got to know yourself and what you want to do. I feel like you know, if you lose that aspect or that childlike fun of it, you know, it you kind of lose your heart in it. You know, there's always it's always good to take breaks, and it's always good to you know, do something else in addition to make you yourself more rounded. But ultimately, I feel like for me, I've taken that route, and you know, it's definitely paid off. And you know, I'm no fat cat. Anything that you see on me is real. Like I've taken myself, or I've worked with one other person or two other people to capture, and you know, I think that that's like what makes my music different from like more music that are more over processed, or like you know, my videos are very personal. And you know, I just like to you know, kind of show a real aspect to who I am, as well as like keep my private life you know, in order as well, because there's things that I use as inspiration in my personal life that I don't necessarily want to share in the music, but but the music is the result of that, you know. So I think there's a lot of love that goes into that, you know, like any artist, like any painter, or like any crafter, or any artisan, any baker. And you know, if you don't bake with love, you know, you're not going to get a good cake, you know. And I think that that's what it really comes down to is, you know, making your music with love. And like I said, like you also got to realize who you're taking advice from, because if you're taking advice from the wrong person and someone who like hasn't gone to the places that you want to be, not in like a competition level, but on a life lesson level, I think that that will affect your opinion. You know, I feel like if you are listening and being around the right people that can actually mentor you, and like a big shout out to like everybody that I've ever worked with, because I've been able to grow and adapt to everything that I've learned, good or bad. And sometimes with the bad situations, you end up learning more that's more beneficial for you, in not even like on a monetary scale, but on a way that gives you more growth on adapting. And since the music industry is so here today, gone tomorrow with the change, and you have to update yourself and always keep fresh and always keep new, I think that that's what keeps it fun for me, um, to always make new stuff and to kind of use that as my outlet. So
That was a lot to process.
yeah, I'm sorry to
I'm just
sorry
like thinking,
to
I'm like thinking through all that. I'm like, whoa,
yeah,
that was a lot. I mean, you mentioned one thing, like you have to go through the bad times in order to get to the good times. Nothing's just all good times, because if everything was just good, then you don't know what good actually is, and vice versa. Like you got to go through the bad to get to the good. Like they're not mutually exclusive from one another. Whether you're a musician or a comedian who goes out on stage and bombs, like you have to go through those, because you build up those calluses on your hands, you build up those muscles, and then you are able to dissect, like, why did that happen? Why did that go wrong? What could I have
right,
done to ensure this
exactly.
doesn't happen again? Because nothing's just a straight line to the top. I
It's
mean, I
not.
think of like chain smokers. Does anyone remember like Selfie was like their first big song?
It
does
was,
anyone
and
I don't
then
think anyone remembers that anymore really, but like that was the song, and it was just such a silly song.
and I feel like nowadays with silly songs and jingles like that is a lot of the time like your shoe in, you know, like You remember like Friday by if it's Friday, Friday, gotta get down.
I don't know
Like
if
that
that
was.
worked well for her though.
No, it probably worked in the opposite direction, but like that's like the beauty of the music industry. And I'm gonna say beauty in the sense where, um, like my new album is called Beautiful Mess, and I kind of have that in a sense where, I, there's a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's a lot of bad things that happen. But if you're able to take the good with the bad, ultimately the good outweighs the bad, and the bad isn't so bad. And I think that's one of the things that people have to like remind themselves, because I mean I have to do it pretty often, like not to get too upset over something, or just to kind of ride the wave, and yeah, finding beauty in the chaos. I think if you can find beauty in the chaos, you'll be happier, you'll be more successful. Finding beauty in the chaos is, making sure that you find the light in the darkness. Because if you're not able to find the light in the darkness, you're going to be stuck in the darkness for a really long time, And I think that is kind of like my theory for life, because, you know, obviously life is never perfect for anybody, and I feel like the higher you climb, uh, the more you can fall, and I feel like with the music industry, you can definitely on your own level have your own set of fans, and have your own set of people that support you, and with the music, and doing things like this podcast and stuff, it really gives people a chance to see like what is behind the music and what goes into it, so because there's a lot that goes into just releasing songs that people don't listen to right off the bat or whatever, so there is a lot of struggle that starts with that.
Yeah, I mean, any great artist, the ones that produce and put out the most content typically win. Like the ones who paint the most typically end up eventually being recognized. And I would say music is no different, because each time you put something out, you're learning something. Or nowadays, people post in the social media, like you got to keep posting,
Yeah,
even if no
exactly.
one's liking or commenting. You'd be very surprised how many more people are seeing it than you believe, and just continuously making the highs higher and the lows higher too. There's going to be highs and there's going to be lows, but making sure that they're going up
Yeah, and
over time.
I definitely agree with that, like 100%. And I feel like sometimes a lot of people want to take the how I should compare it, the like tortoise and the hare race story,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like for me, I've haven't taken the rabbit route. I like kind of taking things at my own pace and having my own strategy and working together with people who have helped me personally, and those are the people that I'm thankful for. And I think that there's a lot more that you can learn and better yourself along the way, because you can be like a famous DJ and play to all these people, and I'm not saying that that's wrong or hard or easy. I mean, it's very difficult, it's challenging, but I feel there's ways that you can do like also one-off shows and tour on your own on your own time, and do your own routes, and really develop personal connections where like shows will call you and want to fly you out and do different things. And I think that that's like the cool part about the industry, and making your own connections and doing it independently, essentially, because make and you make and develop better connections and relationships. And I think that that's ultimately what makes successful shows and successful tours, and why people will actually want to check you out and listen.
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely be a struggle. I mean, one person that comes to mind that definitely overdid it was Avicii, and that ended up being a bad outcome. And then I remember how he wanted to start doing the music he wanted to do, and then he performed at what was it, Ultra, and then he like performed it, and everyone's like, "What is this?" And
Yeah,
then
well,
it like eventually then it caught on, but like he got a lot of hate for doing what he actually wanted, and I watched the documentary on him. It was pretty sad, but it also like gave a lot of insight on how hard the music industry is, despite how light everything might look when you're on stage in front of thousands of people.
right. No, I totally understand, and it definitely is, and obviously ripped to one of the legends of Ichi, and I mean, definitely being one of my like influences along the way as far as like chord progressions and melodies and such. Like I said, like I think a lot of people start off with so much money and so much success, and you can stay at that level obviously and be a complete legend, like the oldies, not the oldies, but like the legends like David Guetta and Cascade and yeah, Tiesto, Avicii, like they're the legends, Martin Garrix. But those are specific DJs, and I feel like the one-off artists can have a different route and approach. So like I am not your like typical Avicii or David Guetta, because you're not gonna go to a Cascade show and necessarily see him on drum kit. Um, So I think that that's the one-off difference that I like to not only bring to the table as like my stage performance, but like as an artist, because a lot of these dance tracks that I make, I'll put a lot of live aspect in it, and not that those DJs didn't, but 98% of the shows that I've played were never behind a CDJ. It was maybe like 1% of the shows that I agreed to do like a DJ set for was behind a CDJ. 98% of the time I'm bringing my keyboard. You know, uh, with the show with Denver, I actually rented a drum kit out in at Guitar Center, and they told me that the stage was already packed. So within 10 minutes, I had to return the drum set. So I just did like live vocals and live keys. But yeah, I have a piano that I play with. So I think it's like what you play with as an artist on stage that differentiates you from being a DJ or being an artist or being like a composer or producer or being a live electronic artist. And I think you can take a lot of influence from that, which I do, because between me and you on this podcast, and to all the great listeners who catch this, which you know I think it comes down to doing things your way and having the courage to do so, because when it comes down to it, it's really about making something that sticks and doing that one-off thing. Like you can chart on the Billboard charts or the iTunes charts making dance music, but like I said, for me, I'll hire like a saxophone player and kind of change things up the way that I want to do it. So back to your original thought, you know, I think that that's what makes me as an artist, and I have never lost like my kid like fun sense when it comes to music, and I just always try and keep that when I'm playing shows or touring. And I think if people like me and they listen to my music and they don't know anything on me, I think that they could maybe tell and pick that up through the music, which is very cool. And it goes both ways. I think the music industry is very cutthroat. I think it's very like, if you have a ton of money and connections and resources, you're going to be successful. But for the independent artists and people who start from nothing and have to start at a young age, and like I've been playing on the same drum kit that my dad got me like since I was 3 years old, and I've just revamped it like 30 years or 25 years or whatever. And I think that recreating yourself in the music industry is what is going to make you more successful. And I think that ultimately it's about being able to make a living off of what you love to do, regardless if it's music or it's not. If I think the true key to happiness is being able to love every aspect that you do. So if you're doing music full time, and you're not loving it and you're not making the best music that you can make, I suggest that you get a job that you love, not a 9 to 5 or whatever. Do something else. Be well balanced. I work multiple hours. I work multiple jobs. I am an agriculturalist. I do produce. I do like recycling. I just do what makes me happy. Is my point. And I think that that's like what makes the best type of music from me. And I feel like that's my like soul's mission, is just to express in my music that it's about breaking away from the norm and being okay with taking kind of the tortoise route, because 10 years later, you're gonna get a call or to do something that you worked your whole life for, and you have the experience now to do it. So I think that sorry for being a chatty Cathy, but I think that when it comes down to it, it's about having all the knowledge you can, and when that opportunity comes, absolutely hitting it out of the park. And I think that a lot of people give up on that opportunity or that vision before it even comes, and then it never happens. And a lot of the successes and things that I've done really just are the result of that.
Yeah, I'm working towards doing something like that in the financial space. I haven't figured out how to do it, but I've come up with a couple ideas. And for me,
Cryptocurrency, baby.
yeah, cryptocurrency solves everyone's problems. Uh, so, but yeah, I actually I I used to DJ a little bit and play piano a little bit. I know more than most, but I'm by no means a professional. And I actually like came up with a couple of like kid songs that I've been like working on, like doing songs for kids about finance and entrepreneurship
Oh, that's cool.
and things like that. Yeah, I did like one song. I think it's called like Superhero of Ideas, and it's like about
Oh,
like
sweet.
entrepreneurship
That's
a little
awesome.
bit. And then in what you were saying, you just got to keep going. Like, you know, I'm in the finance space, so I don't know. Maybe coming up with songs could be cool. I don't
No, I
know.
think that honestly, that's definitely one of the most brilliant strategies I've heard in that sense. Like I've never, if I think if I would have met more people who had a creative idea with, you never hear in like of like a banker like making child bank songs. So you know what I mean. So I think it's a really good strategy, and I think that there's definitely people that would want to listen, and I think it shouldn't matter if people think it's a bad idea or not. I think as long as if you feel good creating something like that sounds good, you know, then you shouldn't worry about people like listening. You're gonna automatically have people that appreciate what you do that are gonna listen to it. So I'm saying that you'll attract your right fans, and you'll establish the right people that you want for that type of music. So I mean, I tip my hat off to that strategy. Um,
Oh, I have no shame.
yeah, man. I mean, if you ever need any help with that at all, obviously I'm here to help you, and any of the clients that or listeners that are listening. I'm always taking clients and helping people, and I think that that's one of the fortes that I have, is just being able to hear a project and fit into and adapt to what I think would make it successful and sound good, with giving people the creative control that they desire. And like I'm not one to tell someone that they're awful at singing. I would actually give them the critiques that they need as far as, playing drums go and things like that. I'm here to nurture and, you know, kind of take things slow with people. And I know that the music industry is so fast and this and that. But I feel like if you're one of the people to kind of bring a new, fresh feel to things, I think that people will appreciate you for who you are. And I'm blessed for like the people that appreciate me for who I am.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of ideas. It's just being able to
No,
execute
definitely not.
execute all of the
No,
ideas.
well, I think that that's what makes music uh, so fun, and why so many people play music. Like the reason why I opened the Hurdle Sound Lab is because I knew that my hometown of Buffalo, New York had so much talent, but I knew that the bigger recording studios in the area were like pushing people away, even if they were like the first timers. And I felt like that would be my avenue and was my route for a long time to help nurture people that like have never recorded before. So I wanted to show people that there is a start and there is a way to, be a good independent artist. And my motto was, being an independent studio for the independent artist and showing them, hey, you can do A to Z, and like not necessarily giving them, putting the Bible down their throat or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot of ways to do things. I think there's a lot of ways to get things done. I think what the rules were in the past sometimes don't apply anymore, to like the way that things change and they grow, and I think that's only going to continue.
So growing up in Buffalo, how did that shape the music that you make now?
Well, I can honestly tell you, one of the reasons why I that's one of the reasons why I don't make country music. So, not that I have any.
Country music's big up in New York or Buffalo.
I would say if you're looking at a scale of 1 to 5 women, 3 of 5 listen to country. So, you know, um, not I'm all down for like the rodeos and like the barbecue ribs and the corn on the cob, and it's I listen to like Morgan Wallen, and so I'm not like a country hater at all, but I feel like Buffalo is like a lot of country, like a lot of rap, a lot of hip hop, a lot of dance music, like underground dance music. But I will say, living in LA, like everything was like everything, and the radio is better out in LA, and like just like the music selection is better out there. Buffalo has a wonderful music scene. They have lot of wonderful people that live here that are talented. Rick James came from Buffalo. We've got the Goo Goo Dolls. We've got we got like Benny the Butcher, and Conway the Machine, and the Griselda crew that are like more of the hip hop, side. So there's a lot of big artists that came from Buffalo. But like I said, I think that there is always a way to do things, and I'm glad that I'm able to learn from Robbie from the Goo Goo Dolls, and working with like the Ray Charles family and things like that to really kind of show me where I want to stay and what my lane is, and what I want to do with my own music. So I'm just grateful for the experience that I've had, because it's mold who I want to be as an artist and what I am as an artist.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely important. I had an interesting like thought pop in my head, and it was everyone has like a song or an artist that they might be embarrassed to like share that they actually like. Not gonna lie, like I could listen to Britney Spears like and get down to it. Is there like an artist that you have that's like a guilty pleasure of yours that people would laugh about?
Yeah, I think if you know me personally, I'm definitely a fan of Harry Styles.
Harry Styles?
Yeah, like the watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high. You know, like that type of shit was is awesome to me, and hopefully you can bleep that out. But um, but yeah, no, watermelon sugar high is like one of my guilty pleasures, and you know, just I'm obviously like a big Beatles fan. Like, I love Nightmares on Wax and a lot of electronic music, like Big Gigantic and Grizz and Grismatic. But yeah, my guilty pleasure is just basically anything that is catchy and good. If it's catchy and good, like, not that it's super poppy, but like Murder on the Dance Floor is a super good one. Like Murder on the Dance Floor, you know, like, I just think if it has a good melody and, it's super singable, like, I think it's definitely something you'll catch me sing.
Oh man, there's just so many catchy songs where it's just like, my daughter's like 2 now. I'm like singing Miss Rachel songs throughout the day.
Well, even, I mean, I feel like a lot of kids songs nowadays, or like theme songs, they're so different than like how we grew up in the 90s or whatever. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so I had like Hey Arnold and like Cat Dog and Ren and Stimpy and Cartoon Network and all that stuff, and that stuff doesn't even exist anymore. And the themes, Tom and Jerry, for example, like perfect example would be Tom and Jerry. I love Tom and Jerry, huge Tom and Jerry fan, and they don't even have the originals. Never even had voices. All it was just orchestral and sound effects. And I think the change from like television, from what it was to like black and white to color to orchestral cartoons without the music to these cartoons now like Bluey and like, you
Oh,
know,
watch a lot of Bluey.
oh man, I think, like we had Blue's Clues, you know what I mean? So, so I think that it's all, like I said, it's all about the change and the being able to adapt. A lot of people hate change and a lot of people hate to grow, and they get stuck and unhappy because they're doing the same thing over and over again. But I think that that's what makes making music fun for me, is like always experimenting with like different, instruments or sounds or vocals or people. And you're always going to get a fresh sound, you're always going to get a fresh something new. And I feel like that applies to life, with like having kids and picking their food. And you always want to pick something that sticks with you and something that's good for you. So I think that applies to like, all different aspects of life.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter will just copycat everything I do. Like, if I put a
Yeah,
yoga
how
mat
is
down and start
that?
stretching, she'll be like, Dada, stretch,
Right,
rail a stretch.
she'll be over here doing lunges.
Yeah, she does her squats. She does her planks.
Oh, good for her. I
Yeah,
mean, hey,
she's strong little lady.
does do you encourage instruments with your child or
Oh
your
yeah, she has a little
children?
drum thing. She likes
Awesome.
to play the piano.
Aww. Don't you love how like kids basically like have their own language that you have to learn?
Yeah, it'll be like we get in the car and I'll be like, "Hey, what song do you want to hear?" And she's like, "Play Dada's song." And it's actually
That's awesome.
Levels by Avicii.
Hey, that's great. I remember I used to get in trouble when I was a kid. Not in trouble, but like reprimanded. Like my aunt Tina, for example, like my aunt, she would play like classical music, and I would always want to play the Beatles. So she would be like, "Oh, Angela, like, turn off the classical radio." Like, you know, like I would want to turn it off, and I would want to put the Beatles on, and I would always get like reprimanded because I always wanted to put like the Beatles on, like basically every stereo system I got the chance to. So I guess, yeah, being a child and being an adult is clearly I mean, not to me, but like it's clearly a scary thing to some people. You can either be great at it or, you know, not or not, So
Yeah. Well, you can choose to play the
be
game on
bet
easy mode or
right.
on expert mode. So
Yeah,
the
or you
choice
can,
is
yeah,
everyone's.
I think a lot of people are happy with being comfortable, and that's their route and that's their lane and that's good for them, and I'm proud that they found the things that they want to do, and I'm glad that they're happy, and a lot of that's like their pursuit of happiness, right? But I feel like my pursuit of happiness is not working, you know, a simple job and coming home and drinking a beer and sitting down and watching football, or just watching 91210, or I don't even think that's still on anymore. But just the basic. I just I don't really like just simplicity like that. I like challenge. I like to be challenged. Not that I'm saying I like hard times, but hard times have made me who I am as a creator and as an individual. And like I said, I just appreciate the chance of being on your podcast and being able to express that as well, because these are the you know opportunity for me to like express that and have that gratitude, um, because nothing I think in life is easy, especially when you're chasing your passions and you're doing things that you want to do in life to move forward.
Yeah. They reminded me of I think I heard it on Joe Rogan, like some sort of quote. He said like, hard times make hard men make good times make soft men make hard times, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I gotta go cook dinner
Awesome.
for my daughter, and we have a 3 week old
Aw,
baby, so
I
I gotta
that's
run. But I
amazing.
did have
Oh,
one last question I wanted to ask. You mentioned the
that,
Beatles several times. If you could choose one Beatles song to describe your journey as an artist, what would it be and why?
um, that's a super hard question.
It's a good question
Um,
because you got to think about it.
no, no, it's super good. I want to say A Hard Day's Night, because it's very upbeat. Um, I'm always working like around the clock, and I just feel like the momentum of that song is like just as rugged as I can be to accomplish my jobs, and I just feel like it just sums up my whole life. Like, it's a hard day's night, man. You gotta do what you gotta do at the end of the day, and I feel like a hard day's night is like the perfect way to just describe my life. So I appreciate you having me on here, and thank you so much for your time and for having me a part of the podcast. And thank you so much for everyone for listening and for listening to the music. And feel free to follow me on socials and social media at Idolo Music, on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find me on Spotify. And I'm really excited about the new album that I have coming out. So stay tuned for that.
Sweet. Yeah. I'll have to come to a show if I'm able to get out of the house.
No worries. I'll make sure I can sneak you in through the back.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for hopping
Thanks,
on. We'll see
Josh.
everyone next time.
I
Peace
appreciate
out.
you. Talk to you soon.